I've recently been forced to conceptualize the notion of conspiracy in such monumental proportion. It eclipses in its all-encompassing shadow all other mind-blowing, universe-altering revelations as far as their effectual truth and what they mean for world. And though I am far from resolving its deeply profound riddle as possibility, it has nevertheless shattered my foundational truth when it comes to personal insight into the astronomical mechanics, motion, formulation, structure, and construct of celestial entities comprising both planetary and star system. Having studied astronomy as my science in college, I believe myself to have had better grasp of heavenly motion than most. And yet my knowledge on the interaction of the Earth with the other objects of our solar and universal system has been diffused in such way that I am left in quandary, which makes me unable to entertain other focus. Similar to the day after I awoke to the conspiracy of 9/11 and government-sponsored terror, I'm now in need of model which would sufficiently replace in explanation my observation and imagination of how things daily unfold around me as world. Like my cats when I moved them to new residence, having disrupted all they knew as house and living space since their entrance into world as kittens. I, too, am exploring new boundary and limitation in hopes of bringing sense to conundrum, determining specificity of location when it comes to envisioning myself on world. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Fallen Angels TV. And today I decided to break up the focus on the ancient texts, and I will pick up next week with that one particular text. I can't remember the name of it right now, but on the secrets of Elijah, I believe it's something along those lines. But today I wanted to revisit this particular topic and also to let y'all know that I've been hard at work on something which has connection to this particular topic, and I'm still not going to release the particulars on that, but I'm close to being completed. I've written the chapters and am now going through the process of making it precise and also correcting the whatever mistakes might be contained within it. And so it won't be long that I share it with you. And when I finally do, you'll understand why I guarded it and could not release it until coming to some point of completion. And you know, this particular topic has been one that has been heavily discussed as of late. It's definitely one of those hot trending topics, especially on YouTube. If you have been and are a frequent visitor to site and are aware of those things which are being posted by many individuals like myself who do upload a lot of shows. Like I upload both the show from this Saturday broadcast, which I know that, you know, not every Saturday now is Sabbath. And I've since learned that in doing the work on the book that I am currently trying to finish. And so it does have something to do with the flat earth. Watcher Ruth has asked me if that was one of the focuses of the topic, and yes, it indeed is, but it has something to do with a large revelation that was given to me, which has confirmed my study of this particular topic, and now I'm absolutely 100% sure that not only is it biblically, the world model is biblical according to the flat earth as premise, but that the belief, all of our belief in around globular spherical earth, that was totally unwarranted, and that our belief in that as system and as foundational truth is because of our assimilation into the matrix, and that it, when we were children and accepting so many truths which we never knew better to challenge or to question, it led us to most of what we would even come to know and accept as truth, until reaching independence, we have chance to study and to learn differently, which, a lot of people never even reach that particular, as far as that goal or energy, they never reach the place where they are going to challenge things such as this, beliefs such as this. They will always accept and fight to fight the contrary, anything that contradicts what they have been assimilated into believing, and they will hold on vigilantly to such belief without ever even looking into anything which would provide information which could, clarify. They'll just, because so many see it that way, and because science is a supporter of such notion, they'll never even, bother looking into any other possibility. And I have to say that, I certainly was in this camp prior to learning differently. And so soon I will be talking more about, and when I do release this book, there's so much information I'll be able to, talk about 60 shows just on that particular book in itself. But today I'm going to talk about some of the things which led me to come to truth on this particular topic. And it will also give you an idea for some of which, let me state this, I am not writing just another flat earth book, which, so many others, there's many others out there that have written those kinds of books. This has something to do with a specific text, which has long remained hidden and undecipherable because people couldn't make sense of it. And so I'll just, even with that, I've probably said too much, but I'm to the point now where I'm close to completing, and then, even if people were to revisit what I'm talking about and to study it and to, come to understanding of it in similar fashion, still what comprises the various chapters of my book would be unique. And it even just deciphering that text would not be able to, people would not be able to replicate the work that is contained within this particular book. And so I don't want to, again, it's not just another flat earth book which cites the science behind why there's no curvature, no measurable curvature, why, you can see lighthouses and cityscapes up to 60 miles out when they're supposed to be so far below the horizon, according to the curvature of the Earth and the formula which establishes, mathematically that particular curvature. It's not anything to do with any of that. There's enough of those kind of books, and I would not want to rehash all that material anyways just to make it my own. I don't have time to do all that. I was already busy with working on 2 other texts, and I was near completion with those books as well. One a poetry book and the other on the War in Heaven, with a bunch of other information about the end of days, the last days, all the extra biblical texts which are linked to that. And so I, have my own particular niche of which I've been working, and this revelation was so huge that I abandoned temporarily work on those projects. And so it won't be long, but just to bring up some of my own discoveries and my own research, which led me to where I am now, and I'm absolutely 100% positive we do not live on a planet which revolves or orbits around the sun, and that the Earth revolving around the sun, that one revolution takes a full year, and so let's start with that. And one has to do with the fact that Polaris, which is a fixed star and has no motion at all, that this particular star replicates the North Pole on what is the circular flat Earth plane. And if you read the description of this particular show, I wasn't able to, elaborate in full on the explanation that I wrote as commentary to somebody that had, had left comment on one of the YouTube videos, and I'll actually pull that up so that I can share that with you in full. And that would be a good way to set the foundation for this, again, because so many people always, especially, Bible-believing Christians, when they challenge the notion of the flat earth, they immediately go to Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, which talks about the circle of the earth, and how, they think that this one particular passage is reason enough to never look into this as premise. And so let me pull up that passage first. Excuse me, I should have had all this ready, but I've been busy working on that particular text, and so it won't take me but a second to pull this up. But again, just to give you explanation for it, when you look up, use the Strong's Concordance, which I think is a wonderful way to gain further insight into what certain scriptures and biblical passages are referring to, because the English translations will sometimes have 11 different definitions or words that are used for the same Hebrew word. And so it can get confusing if you do not look further into the background of the particular word and why it was chosen. Okay, here it is. And so I think it's important to use the Strong's as a resource for determining some of those things. All right. The passage from Isaiah 40, verse 22 is, "It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in." And the description of this show is based on the Strong's interpretation for the word circle. And so let me go to that first. My response, I'll read you the I'm not going to name the individual, but he said this: "I'm not sure if you're aware, but Isaiah 40 says the earth is a circle." Isaiah 40:22, King James Version, and then he cites the passage that I just read. He said the Hebrew word is chûwg and means circle, and that should be final. And so my response to him was, Isaiah 40:22 speaks of the earth as being formed as a giant circle. However, the way that most interpret it to mean globe, sphere, or planet is incorrect. Also know that this is one of the chapters of my book. The reason I say this is because when one looks up the keyword circle in the Strong's Concordance, one will find that the Hebrew word is chûwg, C-H-U-W-G, or it's pronounced K-H-O-O-G. And that it has been translated 3 times in the scriptures, one as circle, as in this case, once as circuit and once as compass. Its definition is listed as it is used in these 3 instances, circle, circuit, compass, but also as a vault of the heavens. When one visualizes these 3 terms in regards to their form, especially in terms of compass, one certainly pictures in one's mind's eye the form of a circle. However, it is my opinion that Isaiah is referring to a 2-dimensional circle, such as what one would draw upon a piece of paper, and that he is regarding the earth as such as one would see it from high vantage point when peering down upon a flat circular plane. The reason I say this is because when one tries to find a word in the scriptures which could apply to the earth as a globe, planet, or sphere, the closest one can come to it in the Hebrew in terms of shape is the key word ball, which incidentally Isaiah uses in chapter 22, just 18 chapters before the chapter 40 allusion we find of this description of the earth as a circle, with the heavens spread out as a curtain above it. Interestingly enough, Isaiah also says that the form of the earth with heavens spread out above it is in the shape of a tent. This allusion is, in my opinion, confirmation of the circle of the flat earth as what would be floor of the tent or the tabernacle, with the heavens spread out as roof above it, or the roof of the tent. If one looks up ball in the Strong's Concordance, one will find that it is listed as the Hebrew word dure, D-U-W-R. Dure is the pronunciation, which is defined as a circle, ball, or pile. Ball, turn, roundabout. It is used 3 times in the scripture, once as ball, once as roundabout, and once as burn, which as definition are all completely different from the Hebrew word chûwg, which Isaiah uses in chapter 40 to relate as circle, which again fits the shape of the flat earth plane as seen from above. One will not find within the scriptures, within the Hebrew scriptures, the term planet, globe, or sphere. It was with this understanding that I carefully chose which terms I would search out in trying to find this matrix within the Bible code. This particular comment was on the video that I uploaded to YouTube on flat earth in the Bible code, and so that's why you see this this particular portion. So I'll just keep reading. This is why I selected the particular words that I did: flat earth, canopy, tent, truth, ring, edge, even, and dome, which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I discovered when I first began researching this topic, I found a Bible code which finds as matrix all of those particular terms together in one matrix, which in my opinion is rare, because a lot of Bible codes are only made up of 2 or 3 terms. And whenever you find more than 2 or 3, that compounds the possibility, the mathematical possibility of doing so. The fact that I found all of the terms which I share in regards to the Bible code that I found should be mathematically impossible regarding the odds of finding them all together and in the same matrix. This, to me, is just further confirmation of this as hidden truth. The elite absolutely know of what I'm talking about, and that is why they use the flat earth as an emblem on the United Nations flag. The fact that they do so is just their way of making fun of the ignorant masses, which, being deceived by them, believes in the ridiculous notion that as a people we live on a spherical earth, which according to science revolves around the sun at a speed of about 8.5 miles a second, or 66,600 miles per hour. Notice that 666. And as solar systems, we are said to be traveling at a velocity of about 155 miles a second, or 55,800 miles per hour. If you thought those speeds were mind-blowing when considering on certain days one can stand outside with not even a ruffle of wind to rustle one's hair, consider their claim that the Milky Way as galaxy is spinning through the universe at 372.823 miles a second, or about 1.34 thousand miles per hour. Final paragraph. Does not the supposed speed of the Earth around the Sun at 66,600 miles per hour not pique your interest and denote the sinister nature of the forces aligned against the flat Earth as revelation, or is the fact that 666 is part of that number just mere coincidence? I think not. And so that, again, establishes the foundation for why I believe Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22 is speaking of a two-dimensional circle as one would see, as one would draw on a piece of paper or as one would see from above. And again, this, the fact that the Isaiah sees it like this, and the fact that there's no way you can't measure curvature. You just can't. And there's been many scientific experiments to try to measure out the curvature, they say verifies that we live on a spherical a planet or a ball or a globe, which again are terms you cannot find within the Hebrew Scriptures. And why would Isaiah describe the earth as a circle and not a ball when he used the term ball in a passage just 18 chapters before? It doesn't make sense. And so when one looks at, and again, I'm not going to try to relay all of the science out there which confirms that there's no curvature, as well as the many videos of weather balloons going up into the sky that show the horizon as completely flat, and the people that climb Mount Everest and look out at the world in all directions, the horizon remains flat in every direction. And if there was curvature, when you see a cityscape, a far-off cityscape, the buildings should be leaning away from you as a measure, of that curvature, instead of standing straight up and down, which again is my opinion that there is no curvature to be measured or to be found. The other thing, as far as curvature, and this experiment was just recently done by a guy named Jeranism on YouTube. They took a laser pointer and basically shot it from one shore in California across the bay to another portion of land across the way, and it was at a distance. They've done this for a distance of 2 miles and also 4 miles, which if you take the formula for measuring curvature, for every mile, it should be 8 inches below the horizon. And so for the second mile, you would square whatever number, however many miles you are measuring curvature, all you do is square that number, meaning that for 2 miles, you would square 8 inches. For 3 miles, you would square 24 inches, and so on and on. And this should give you the amount of curvature that should be proportionate to a globe which is 25,800 miles across, which is the diameter of the Earth. And so, according to them, if we are living on a round planet, a global planet, the curvature, this would basically mean that in the middle of the oceans, there should be a wall of water that is miles high, where the equator should be, as a result of that curvature. But never, in the history of maritime travel, no boat has ever spoken about seeing such a huge wall of water, unless it's a tsunami or having to climb one. And as far as flights, when you trying to measure or determine curvature when you're in a plane, if we are indeed living on a spherical planet, when a pilot is traveling towards any of the horizons in any direction, he should have to point the nose of the airplane down somewhat in order to maintain level with a rounded planet, a curved Earth, which this is not the case. Any pilot knows that in order to maintain a steady flight, and as far as a level flight, you point the nose straight, and you have the plane level, which shows that there is no curvature to the planet. And whenever you look out at the horizon, wherever you are, like if you're on the Pacific Rim and you look out from the coast out and to the Pacific Ocean, which is just absolutely a breathtaking scene, and you watch the sun set on the ocean, you see the horizon all the way out, perfectly level and perfectly flat. Which another thing which confirms that there is no curvature is the nature of water, and how it will always assume in whatever container it is put in, no matter what how weird the shape, it will always be level at the top. And the nature of water is to assume this level uniformity. And if you have a dam, which the water level on one side of it is much higher than on the other side, and the dam all of a sudden bursts, the water will spill out until it becomes level, proportional to both sides. And and another thing, as far as the way that water works and how there's no curvature, if you were to try to contain water by placing it on, like for instance, even on a tennis ball, the water would drip down until it hits the ground, no matter how you turn that particular tennis ball. There's no way that it can be held, even if we are supposedly, the gravitational forces, which science says is the reason behind the planet being able to hold the oceans in all directions, and also why people that are living in the southern latitudes, like at the bottom of like for instance Australia, and how it is that they're able to be held to the ground when they are upside down and should be falling into space, that this gravity is what binds them somehow to the planet, and that all of the oceans and the seas and rivers and everything, all the water is also similarly bound in that manner, which does not in any way make sense, because how does gravity determine what needs to be bound to the earth, and how is it going to have such force that it can hold an ocean of water and bind it to the earth, but at the same time a bee can fly up towards the sky? And how is it, if gravity is supposedly holding the ocean and all the waters, binding it to the earth, how is gravity to determine, well, this particular bee, we'll just release it from our forces or our power and allow it to fly up towards the sky? It does not in any way make any kind of sense. And so those are just a couple things. Now, a few other things as far as the supposed rotation of the Earth, the spin of the Earth, and how we are supposedly spinning at 1,080 miles per hour at the equator in towards the east, and that if we were to have a flight, if a plane was, were to take off and the planet were moving in that direction, how is it that the plane can gain any kind of ground when it's not even going as fast as the Earth is supposedly spinning if it were flying east? And how is it that if they were to fly north or south, that their particular destination doesn't spin out of reach? And if a pilot were to be flying towards the west, if the planet is spinning at that high rate of speed, would not the particular city or destination that they were trying to get to, would it not spin towards them, and in that way make the flight shorter? Wouldn't the flight, because of the rotation, the spin of the Earth, wouldn't it come closer, faster, so that it would not be, as far as flying east and west, the lengths should differ, which takes me to another experiment that a lot of people have done, and this has to do with during one of the wars, I believe it was the Revolutionary War back in 1812, the artillery personnel, the people that were shooting off the cannonballs, well, they had asked the major, which there's a copy of this, the letter that he sent. They had asked the major how they should adjust, the particular mark, how they should adjust it for the rotation of the Earth. And, they could not understand that. And so the different, even artillery, artillery personnel in armies right now, they don't take any consideration as to the curvature of the Earth at all in determining where to shoot their projectiles. And whether you shoot towards the east, towards the north, towards the west, or towards the south makes no difference. The cannonball or the artillery shell will go about the same distance in all directions. And going back to the illustration of the pilot, look at the way that parachutists, skydivers, when they jump from an airplane, if the Earth is moving in the opposite direction, wouldn't the Earth quickly move, and the whatever mark they were trying to jump at, wouldn't you have to calculate for that? And if the Earth was moving towards the east, wouldn't you have to jump like way before the mark that you were trying to hit? And take into consideration that, okay, the Earth is spinning at 1,080 miles per hour at the equator, and depending on where we are, what latitude, and what particular country we're jumping out of a plane in, that we have to determine, well, according to this mathematical equation, we have to jump 3 miles away from destination in order to hit our mark. But none of that happens. Skydivers locate their particular mark and visually can see it, and no matter how high they are in a plane, they jump out and then they glide towards that particular X marks the spot. And if the Earth was moving, you absolutely could not do that. And, because if the Earth was moving, the parachutists, the ground below the parachutists would quickly move away from them. And this goes for, the same thing for balloonists, hot air balloonists. When they lift off the ground, the Earth, if it's spinning, should quickly move away from them. And they should not be, they should not be able to maintain a flight where they would be above that particular spot for any length of time. And, again, whether they were flying north or south or west or east, the Earth should be moving towards the east, and so they should have to take into consideration their flight plan and how they're going to land, all of that. But again, that does not happen. And we all know you can go outside on a day, on some days where there's absolutely no wind, which is a feat that should not be possible if we're on a planet spinning at 1,080 miles an hour. In fact, if we were rotating at that kind of speed, just imagine when you are driving down the road and you stick your arm out of your window, how much the wind pushes against your arm. And so if we were dealing with that kind of wind speed, it would shear your arm directly off, especially if you were driving towards the west, or like using train as transportation. There's no way you could, as they do in Hollywood, run on the top of a train, or jump from one car to another. That would never be possible. And so those are things to kind of think about. Link is asking, so do you think the Earth is stationary and suspended? I absolutely believe the Earth is stationary. It does not move. And, proof of that is that you can shoot a cannonball in all directions, and it will basically go the same distance no matter which direction you shoot it in. And also that no matter which direction a parachutist jumps from a plane, that the Earth is not moving beneath his feet. And he doesn't have to make any, doesn't have to consider what direction the plane is flying towards in order to calculate how he's going to land. All that doesn't matter. The Earth is immovable and stationary and has been established as foundation for the heavens, which are spread above it. Which this leads me to another point. All of us are familiar and have read Genesis. And we know that according to the order of creation, that the earth was created on the third day. And that on the fourth day, the heavens above, the planets and the moon and the sun, that they were created to be lights for the earth, the sun to be a light for the day, and the moon to be a light for the night. And doesn't it make more sense now that the earth was created first as a foundation for the heavens, which are spread out as a curtain above, as it says in Isaiah? Because if the earth was simply one of the planets that spun in orbit around the sun, wouldn't the Most High God make the sun first and then place the other lesser orbs, heavenly luminaries around that particular orb. I mean, that to me would make more sense. But if you know that the earth is a foundation for the heavens, and that the sun and the moon revolve above the earth, and also according to proportion, the earth is much larger than the sun and the moon, that it makes sense as to the order of creation and why the earth would be created on the third day, and also how that the particular things that came about, because it also says, I believe in the Book of the Bee, that the earth, the trees and the things that grew upon it, even though we know about photosynthesis, that when God ordered them to grow, that it wasn't based upon the sun's light. And so those are some of the things as far as the biblical account that this seems to clarify and make more sense as to why, again, the earth was created first as foundation, and how the other particular pieces were spread above it. Also, when talking about the curvature and how you're not able to calculate curvature, all of us know about being able to see cityscapes. The profile of a city at far off distances, or being able to see lighthouses, and also bridges. Bridges that scale a long portion of land, that jump over particular pieces of, like the San Francisco Bridge, scaling, covering, and going across the Bay Area. When railroads and also bridges, when they are built, people have in no way do they take into consideration the curvature of the earth. Even with recently there was the world's longest bridge was built in China, and it covers, I don't even remember how many different miles, but the people, the conductors, the contractors, the people that construct those particular bridges and also the railway systems, ask them if they build into and calculate into their blueprints any curvature at all, and they'll tell you absolutely not. That it's already difficult for them to be able to build a blueprint and to construct a railroad or a bridge according to that blueprint without any curvature, built into it or calculated or formulated. That there is no curvature determined in those particular blueprints, and that doesn't matter how many miles the railroad, it could be from the east coast of the United States all the way to the west coast of the United States, covering over 4,000 miles, and there's not a bit of curvature included into those calculations. And that no matter how large the bridge is and how big of a span it is that it covers and goes across. There's no curvature established to those particular bridges. Which also brings me to another, when I was reading about the lack of curvature being included in, the calculation of railroads, there's a quote from one of these contractors talking about how if there were curvature, that how would a train be able to, because at some point, if there is curvature, it's going to have to go uphill. It's going to have to, just like we were talking about with if there's curvature in the middle of the ocean, there's a wave somewhere out there near the equator that is miles high. It's the same thing for a railroad line that is stretched over thousands of miles. At some point in the particular track, there would have to be a point where the particular locomotive and all of the cars that it is pulling, it would have to go up this particular, curvature and then come down the other side. And that they would have to go in slow, they would have to build out that curvature maybe 1 inch. Who knows how you would even figure out how to do that in order to keep travel on a locomotive, on a train, safe. That would complicate matters just that much more. And so those are just a few things which should let you know that we do not live on a round earth as is spoken about by science. Here's another thing as far as, if the earth is spinning around the sun, the way that Polaris, as the fixed star, that it serves as the point during the celestial night for which all of the other constellations and all of the other stars will rotate around. Like the individuals that are able to take time-lapse photographs and then putting together a series of these time-lapse photographs, they can show during the course of an entire night how all of the stars move around in circles around Polaris, just like the sun and the moon move around the North Pole as the center of the flat Earth plane. How is it if we are spinning around the sun and every 3 months there should be enough difference as far as the parallax, which if you don't know what parallax just means our field of vision, our line of sight. And our line of sight doesn't matter where you are on the earth. If you live in the same place over the course of a year, the constellations that you are able to see during the night, they should change slightly every day. And in 3 months, having gone, 90 degrees to a different position around the sun, we should be seeing a completely different set of stars and constellations during the night. And that when we, after 6 months, we should be directly across from the sun in a position which puts us in opposition to where we were 6 months prior, meaning that night and day should be opposite. That if we are, so say we're on the east side of the sun, in 6 months later, we would be on the west side of the sun, and day and night are flipped, meaning that, because we're on this side of the sun, that whatever was night or day when we were on the east side of the sun should absolutely be the opposite on the west side of the sun. And the fact that the hours of day and night only differ by 1 hour according to daylight savings time in a year should let you know that there's no way that we could be spinning around the sun, because in 6 months we would be on the opposite side of the sun, and the hours that comprise night and day on the other side of it should be flip-flopped. And so this also goes to the way that we see the phases of the moon. Because remember, and I'll answer your question here in just a second, Lee. The phases of the moon and also Polaris as the fixed star, they have remained in the same position for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And the fact that Polaris has been the fixed star, and because of its being fixed, it has been used by navigators for thousands of years as a way to determine direction during night when they are not able to see the sun, or where the sun rises from, or where the sun is setting. And so Polaris is an indicator for navigators to determine direction during the course of the night, which would not be possible if we were moving around the sun, orbiting around the sun, because all of these stars of night, all of the constellations which would be visible to an observer from the Earth would change slightly, as I said, every day, but would be absolutely noticeable in 3 months, every 3 months, and then in 6 months we should be looking at the opposite side of the celestial night, and we should be looking at different stars and different constellations. And so this, the fact that we don't, and the fact that Polaris has remained as the fixed star, as a star which, they could determine night and navigate by for thousands of years, is also confirmation that the Earth is unmoving, and that it's the heavenly luminaries, the stars and the constellations which rotate around Polaris, and also that the sun and the moon are what spin above the Earth. And in relation to the moon, all of the phases of the moon, if we were spinning around the sun, the phases of the moon would also get discombobulated after after even a month's time, and would be so thrown off so proportionately that there's no way we would be able to determine when, for instance, God's calendar is based upon the phases of the moon, as I've been explaining about Sabbath. And if we were spinning and the Earth was spinning the moon was spinning with the Earth, and the Earth was spinning around the sun, if, as science says, the reflection of the sun's light off of the moon is what creates the different phases, well, those phases would absolutely be different according to the cycle, the orbit of the Earth around the sun. So much so that there would be no way that the phases of the moon would remain rigid and similar from month to month. And especially not after 6 months' time or 9 months' time. It should be because of our parallax, our line of sight of the heavens, and what we should be able to observe as a viewer from the Earth. All of that should shift, so much so that we see, again, different stars and different constellations according to, to our where we are in relation to our orbit, our revolution around the sun. Welcome, Matthew. Good to see you, brother. All right, let me go back to what Link was asking about. Link asked, what would be the point of keeping this truth from the masses? And that's a really good question. And that's one that I'm still pondering. But I think it has to do with the elite's worship of Lucifer as the light bearer and how he represents the sun god. And it also has, in my opinion, to do with how belief in the solar system and belief in the sun as the foremost and principal entity of such solar system, how it diminishes the focal point, the focus being on the Earth. And that it also, creates, as science tries to convey, the possibility that Earth is not special in any way, but that there are many Earths, such Earths out there, and all of that is determined by random chance. And that any planet that just happens to be in what science refers to as the Goldilocks zone, that it could create the necessary conditions because of being at that distance from, its star. It could create the same conditions which led to the evolution of life as determined by science, rather than that the Earth was created as a special place by the Most High God, and as so is uniquely different than all of the other planets, so-called planets out there in the universe, and that humanity, being a creature that has somehow evolved of life here on this planet, that we were not created by intelligent design as was the rest of creation, but that we just came about as random, perchance, that everything just happened to happen the way that it was, and luckily life evolved, and that led to, our evolution from whatever monkey they say that we are evolved from. And that it has part to play with hiding the fact that we share special covenant with the Most High God, and that we were created in the image of the Most High God. And also, it for those people that believe in the Bible and the prophetic nature and the divinely inspired nature of the gospel, it diminishes that certainty. It diminishes the profundity of that declaration. And they can hide. They could hide the fact that the earth and all of the creatures, including us, that we were all created by the Most High God. And so that has a lot to do with why I think that they have been and are continuing to hide the flat earth as model for world. Now, also know that the elites know and hold this knowledge as a cult secret. And the reason I say this is because Albert Pike, he stated in a letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, the founder of the Italian Mafia, he talked about his having received a vision of Freemasons and the Mafia's need to foment 3 global wars as pretext for bringing the world into a one world order and as means to establish world government, which, after the First World War, they failed with the League of Nations. But after the Second World War, the United Nations was established as the seat of this world government. And the United Nations, on December 7th, 1946, released as its official colors and as the organizational flag of it as, let me pull up. It released officially the flag that the emblem's design is described as this: a map of the world representing an azimuthal equidistant projection centered on the North Pole, inscribed in a wreath consisting of crossed conventionalized branches of the olive tree. The projection of the map extends to 60 degrees south latitude and includes 5 concentric circles. They released their map again in 1946. And this particular map has been flying over the United Nations since that particular time. And all of the other maps of the different United Nations organizations, including the International Maritime Agency, as well as the International Aviation Agency, which those aren't the exact names. But these maps are based upon this, and if you don't know, the azimuthal equidistant projection centered on the North Pole, the map, is basically the flat Earth, a giant circular flat Earth plane with the continents of the world spread out in proportion around the North Pole as center of this particular map. And you can look it up for yourself. They have been flying this map as representation of this organization, and we all know, anybody that's studied the New World Order, you know that the United Nations is the seat of world government, and that it was created to be the international agency for which the global elite would be able to rule the relationships and the interactions of countries with one another through. And that the United Nations was principal in the recreation of Israel as a nation just a few years later, in 1948. And that the declaration to create Israel went forth in November of 1947. So just 3 years after their founding, which they were created, I believe, October 24th of 1945. And so just 3 years after their creation, they were able to mandate the recreation of the nation of Israel, and to, by law, to allow all of the Jews from around the world the right to return and to take over the houses which the Palestinians were living in just days earlier from the creation of the nation of Israel. And that prior to this time, Jews, Arabs, all the people of the world had lived in Palestine peaceably for thousands of years. Besides, the ongoing conflicts that have taken place over this particular land, because it has, as it says in Zechariah 12, Israel has been a cup of trembling among the nations. But especially since its recreation in 1948 as the nation of Israel, it has been the center, the focus of the world for many wars, which, we know that it all has to do with biblical prophecy, that even though the United Nations was that Israel was a creation of the elite through the United Nations, it still was the fulfillment of prophecy, and what the Most High, what Yeshua warned us about in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21 as the blooming of the fig tree, which the fig tree, according to to 2 Peter, the Apocalypse of Peter, has to do with the regathering of the nation of Israel. And Christ said that when you see the blooming of the fig tree, you would know that this generation would be the generation that saw and witnessed his return. All right, 2 comments. Watcheroo says, I agree with Zen on the flat earth. What makes no sense is the nonsense that NASA gives us. I'm glad you brought that point up. I'll get your comment here next, Link. Because most people believe that we live on a planet, on a spherical round ball earth, because of the photos and videos that have been released from NASA by their whether it's whatever satellite or whatever particular moon mission. But again, if you look into and study the history of the moon missions, as well as to the hotly contested debate of whether we ever went to the moon, and I know that all of this sounds farcical. I myself used to believe that, but when you do a little bit of research along the particular lines, just type in NASA hoax and watch a few of those videos, you realize that even the particular Apollo mission, which showed the Earth from space as a globe or a planet, that all was contrived, that it was hoaxed, and that they were not near the moon, but they were actually in low Earth orbit, and that they used a circular window on the lunar module as a way to depict and to hope that the Earth was round and globular. And so why would they do that? If indeed the Earth was spherical, as they maintain and assert that it is, why the need to lie to us? And why the need to create a deception, along those lines? It doesn't make sense unless they're trying to cover something up. And so that was another reason, those were other reasons why I began even researching further into this particular topic. Also, with the International Space Station and those things which are also linked to NASA, including satellites, all of that has been faked as well, and has been hoaxed. And so why the need to do that, unless you were trying to cover up something, and unless you were trying to project the belief in something or another, which was contrary to truth. It just does not make sense. And the extent to which NASA will go in order to contrive belief in the global Earth is just, it's almost laughable when you really begin to do some research on it. And even to the point where this is real funny, but they have an image of the lunar module landing on the moon for the first time, which, how hilarious. Okay, so this is the first time that they ever went to the moon, but somehow they already have a camera crew in place to take pictures of the lunar module landing. Come on. And this is official NASA released image. That in itself lets you know just how far out and just how crazy our acceptance and belief in the integrity of NASA is. And so even to, there's other, there's official NASA images of the satellites, of the, satellites showing the different moons of Jupiter in the background, that even though this is the first time this particular satellite has ever reached that particular region of the solar system, there again, I guess they had to have sent a satellite, as a trailer to follow that particular satellite in order to capture an image of the satellite with the moons of Mars, the moons of Jupiter in the background, and to release this as an official NASA photograph. It's just laughable. And I've covered this in many other shows. There's many different discrepancies which show, like, for instance, the International Space Station was supposedly, we were looking down upon the Earth, and then all of a sudden the Earth, which was passing by, according to the International Space Station, it went to green screen, meaning that they were projecting an image, or what had to have been a fake video series of the Earth going by as it would be seen by the International Space Station from space. And these are not things that I'm making up or that I'm creating. This is NASA's own, and this was during a supposed live moonwalk, International Space Station moonwalk. and when this happened, when the Earth just all of a sudden disappeared, or what the Earth that was supposedly passing by and it went to a green screen. And I mean, it shows you to the extent that NASA will go in order to hoax and to continue the particular hoaxes that they are pulling past people in having us believe in their program, and all of the things that they cite as capacity and ability of the various NASA programs. And another thing, now NASA, in talking about sending a mission to Mars, they are contending with and trying to figure out how to deal with the Van Allen radiation belts, which, if you don't know about those, there's such intense radiation surrounding the Earth, which encompasses the Earth, that if you were to leave the I guess the atmosphere or the Earth, and to go past a certain point out in space, you would be fried by the radiation of these Van Allen radiation belts. But if all of the other Apollo missions, which supposedly succeeded in going to the moon, they didn't have to deal or contend with the Van Allen radiation belts. And when NASA was asked about that, they said that because they didn't know about it, they didn't have to worry about it. But now that they know about it, they have to take this into consideration when, creating a mission which will go past these particular belts, which lets you know, again, it's all contrived, and that the previous Apollo moon missions could not have ever happened, especially with the kind of technology that was available then, because none of the astronauts would have been able to manage even getting through these radiation belts, because it would have killed them, it would have fried them, much less to return to the Earth, passing through them once again. Link, she says, but there are international astronauts that have spent months on the space station. That's all a lie. And I wish you would do some research on that, because the International Space Station is also contrived. I'll tell you one reason why. In their building it, you know how if there was a breach on one portion of the International Space Station, they would need airlocks to secure that part of the space station from all the others? Well, if you look at the design of the International Space Station, it is not built with any of these airlocks. All of the whole entire space station is all connected to each other. Just like, and it's not even like even a submarine, if the hull is breached, you would want to contain the water in one particular part of the submarine. Well, the same should be true for the International Space Station, because if the hull of the space station is breached, the astronauts would want to be able to move to a different portion of it and to close one of these airlocks behind it so that they could maintain the atmosphere within that portion of the space station. But these things are not taken into consideration and not built into the schematics of the space station, which again is another reason why all of that is contrived. Yeah, I know they take their photo ops and they speak to school kids, but all of that is done on zero gravity G-force planes. Look that up. I've posted on the Fallen Angels TV website videos of which expound upon exactly what you're talking about. And I wish you would look into it, because they would show how even the International Space Station, the so-called spacewalk, those things are done in underwater pools, and how on these particular live feeds of, you'll see air bubbles coming, rising up from either the uniform or from the helmet of the so-called astronauts doing these spacewalks. And there have even been scuba divers seen, filmed in, as part of these so-called spacewalks. So do a little accept, all of that as truth, because there's so much, again, and it goes back to, why would they have to contrive it? Why would they have to lie about it? And if they are lying about it, how in any way can it be accounted as true? How do they deserve any integrity? And how can we believe anything that they say? We can't, and that is the truth of it. God bless all. Good night. We'll pick up next week with the secret book of Elijah. Be blessed in Yeshua's name.